Hello, guys. Welcome to another exciting episode on the show, Hidden Secrets in Books. You guys know I only bring the best of guests to my show, the top 1% of guests to my show. And once again, today we have a very special guest. Today's guest is Linda K. Carlisle, a corporate communications strategist and fractional communications partner with more than 30 years of experience helping organizations navigate their most critical business transitions. She works with business leaders, venture capital firms, private equity firms, and their portfolio companies to successfully manage the communication and cultural challenges that arise during mergers, acquisitions, restructurings, leadership transitions, technology implementations, and other major organizational changes. Linda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
All right, so I have some questions here for you, and I would like us to get into them. So, what value does a communications and culture partner bring to a merger acquisition?
Yeah, so during a major acquisition, there's so much change going on. And for the people that are part of the organization that's being acquired, and I would even argue even the company that's acquiring, there are all these questions about what does this mean for us? Where are we going? What does this mean for our major initiatives? Are there going to be fewer people because we're adding these additional people to each function? And so all of that, all those changes bring with them a great deal of uncertainty. At the same time as that uncertainty is going on for the people, you got leadership who are trying to keep all of the plates spinning, because when you're doing a major acquisition, a lot of times it's part of a private equity initiative. There are numbers on the line. There are targets that have to be hit. And then all of the integrations, not just the people integrations, but the technology integrations. There is so much going on, so many moving parts. And someone has to be paying attention to how do you answer all of the questions so that people who are part of this transition, who maybe haven't been along for the ride about why we're doing this, that they get comfortable with why we're doing this, that they feel that they're valued, that they understand why the acquisition was so important and that they're part of that value, and to help them feel maintain their psychological safety so that they can stay focused on their job and performing, because it's only when they have that sense of safety that they will perform well. And the numbers from the deal, the numbers behind the acquisition, rely on those people performing well. So that's the role that comms plays. We really help get in there and help make sure that left hand knows what the right hand's doing and why, and that everyone's important to making it a success.
Companies have completed mergers for decades without focusing heavily on communication or culture. Why has that changed?
Well, I think that we've learned from some of the mistakes of the past. I mean, I think that we have done acquisitions in the past, and we've learned that, for instance, some of our best and brightest people who have been a part of an acquisition have said, you know what, I'm out of here, because they were left to be uncertain. We learned that that's a bad thing. We've learned by studying these kinds of initiatives that when people aren't brought along for the ride and made to feel comfortable and safe as they move through the transition, we've learned that their productivity goes down. We learned that they stand at the water cooler and gossip about whether or not there's going to be layoffs. We learned that the best and brightest of them sharpen up their resumes. The rest of them, they just kind of go on duck your head and stay low kind of a mode. None of those behaviors are things that are done to, take the performance of the company, but the net result of people being distracted by their fear is underperformance. And we've learned from underperformance in days gone by, and we're doing a better job by increasing communication.
Okay, thank you so much, Linda. That was a wonderful answer. So, my next question for you is this: which stages of an integration process are most dependent on effective communication?
Yeah, there's several stages. So, when I think about, up front, first of all, when you're in due diligence, it's important to kind of do an early stage assessment of the culture of the company that you're acquiring, just so you kind of know what you're getting into and where the similarities and differences might lie. But the truth is, and it isn't until you're really into the transition that you start to realize whether the words on paper are true or not. um, so I'd say the first area where communication is really important is that on day one, when you're announcing to a company and to all of its employees that they're part of a new organization, what you want to do is, you want to wrap that in a framework that is as positive as possible. You're excited about making that acquisition. That acquisition is going to do something for the future growth of the combined organization. You think there's great talent and great minds and great products and intellectual capital that are part of the company that you're acquiring. And you need to let the people that have made that possible, you need to let them know that they are valued and that they are the very reason behind the acquisition, and that they are welcome in the new company, and that you need their skills and you need their talents, and that you're truly excited about where the combined company is going. So day one, you kind of have to make it a party. You also want to make sure that, maybe give them some swag so that they have a reason to feel pride in the new company that they've become a part of. Really bring your leaders out to the foreground on that day and speak in a very authentic, from the heart kind of a way, so people get a sense of who the new leadership team is. Bring out the leaders of the company who ran the company before the acquisition, so that those folks can also endorse the combined organization and explain why they think it's a good thing for the combined organization to be one. So you have day one communication, which is all about starting out with a positive experience. And then shortly thereafter, you will likely start to see some changes. You only need one HR leader. You only need one marketing leader. You only need one sales leader. And so there will probably be some very visible high level exits, and you want to help people navigate those changes and not feel like, oh God, the guy who hired me, who promised me what my career is going to look like, he just left. Now what's going to happen to me? At the same time, right behind that guy leaving, there's probably going to be an integration of that function. So now I've become a part of a larger team with a brand new leader. All of those changes are highly disruptive to people, and your communication needs to be really like, look it in the eye and explain what is it that you're doing, why are you doing it, why is this leader a great leader, what is his vision or her vision for the future of the team, and just really helping people understand what things are going to look like going forward from those changes. By the way, during all those integrations, there might be a few layoffs where you find redundancy within the two teams, and helping people understand that the people who are being exited are being well taken care of will go a long way to helping them feel stable and like they're safe in their new roles. And then once all of that change starts to settle down a little bit and we get into a norming performing kind of a mode, that's a great time to do some research, some listening, some focus groups, talking to people, finding out what are they feeling about the newly combined organization. Are they feeling fearful still? Are they feeling safe? Are they proud of where the company's going? Are they certain? Are they uncertain? Getting a sense of where they're at. One final thing that is really great during that listening mode is, as you come out of that change management heavy change period, now it's time to look to culture and say, how do we make these two cultures into one combined culture? And that's an opportunity to look at both organizations and say, what are the behaviors within company A that we want to keep? And what are the behaviors in company B that we want to keep? And are there any behaviors in these two organizations that we want to get rid of? Okay, great. Here's a sort of a straw man of a new culture. But then, are there any behaviors we need to add? Do we need more innovation? Do we need more collaboration? Really understanding what are the behaviors that we need as an organization to achieve our company objectives going forward. And then now you've got a straw man of a culture. You can sort of bench test that with the people when you're doing the focus groups. You can test that with leadership as well. And then coming out of that, the final set of communications is really communication around launching that newly combined integrated culture so that everybody from both sides of the organization understands what the future looks like.
Okay, thank you so much, Linda. So, why do
Dominic?
you think communications and culture remain overlooked during many M&A transactions?
Okay. Well, I think that a lot of mergers and acquisitions are led by folks who are very focused on the financials. And in addition, they're very focused on the operating efficiencies and, getting those hard, visible systems integrated. And these are very visible things, whereas the dynamics that communications impacts are less visible until you start sensing there's a failure. And so unless you're, capable of thinking about the psychological impact of change, or unless that's an area where you really kind of have a bias for understanding, it's much easier within the private equity space to focus on the measurable things, the easily measurable things, such as the financials and the how what percentage of the technology has been converted over to the new systems.
All right, thank you so much, Linda. So, fractional executives have become increasingly popular. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think that it's an emerging trend. I think that it's got a lot to do with changing dynamics in the employment space and the workforce. I think that um, for easily 40 years, we've been in a mode where a lot of times we lay people off to hit our quarterly numbers, right? And when a large part of the population gets to a certain level of experience where they're looking at the workforce and they're looking at who's most likely to be let go when there's some financial strain on the organization. And a lot of times it's A, very, very young people who don't yet have a lot of experience, and B, very experienced people who know who they are and what they're worth. And increasingly what you see is those people saying, you know what, I might be better off not going back into a corporate environment, but instead putting my talent out for hire into those spaces where I'm most needed. And so that's kind of a win-win for organizations, because it means, as the fractional, you're winning because you're doing the kind of work you're most excited about, that you have the most experience doing, where you really add the best value. And then for the organization that's hiring you, they're able to hire you in bite-sized chunks that match exactly what their needs are. And when the assignment is over, maybe that person goes away entirely, maybe they switch their focus to another area, or maybe they take on a lesser assignment until another heavy need is needed. But in all cases, the cost to the organization, to the client that is hiring that fractional, is literally a fraction of what they would pay for having that person on staff, full bore, fully loaded benefits. So everybody's kind of winning. For the client, it's more affordable, but they're getting really seasoned talent. And sometimes it might be the talent who's right for the situation at hand. Say you've got like an ops situation, and you've got, you want to do a startup of a new type of equipment or a new kind of operation, you can hire that specific talent. But then maybe, 6 months later, you've got some kind of safety concern, and you can bring in a person who's a fractional in operations space who's really strong at safety. So you can bring the right talent to the assignment at hand, for, again, like I said, a fraction of the cost.
Okay, so can you share a cautionary tale about an organizational change where poor communication created avoidable problems, and tell us what leaders should have done differently?
Yeah. I can give you one example. I once had a client who had brought me in to help them navigate some organizational changes that were they were looking to come up with, and they had a fairly new leadership team that had only come together maybe within a year before, and they really had not yet worked out all the bugs on terms of what different people were or were not authorized to say and things like that. And so what happened was, as they were just starting to plan these organizational changes, which included a reduction in workforce, during one of the town hall meetings that we had across the entire enterprise, one of these leaders talking about something else completely unrelated, and then she lets it slip that there's going to be a layoff. And this organization had never really had layoffs. And so it was completely shocking to the organization. And the HR team was months away from being ready to decide who was staying, who was going, work out all the financials, all that stuff. So that organization had to live through the fear and anger of knowing that there was a pending layoff for months on end. And it just slowed everything down. It made people angry. It made people a little bit passive aggressive. New projects got slowed down. People were wondering why they were doing certain initiatives, that there was going to be a layoff anyways. And it was a bit of a train wreck. And so, I'm really not a fan of the notion of, you hear this phrase, flying the plane while building it. And I'm just not a big fan of making announcements and getting out over your skis. I think the task of being a leader means, it doesn't mean that you'll never, ever have to shoot from the hip, but to the degree that you are able to be planful, look out ahead at what's coming and what's needed and what that's going to mean for your people, and then having a plan of how you're going to keep your people whole as you move through those transitions. I mean, doing all that work up front before you let something, really disturbing hit the airwaves. I think, that's just part of good leadership. So I'm a big fan of not letting your messaging get out ahead of your plans to the degree possible.
Okay, so here is my final question for you. If
Okay.
there's one thing you wish listeners will take away from this conversation, what would you want that to be?
Well, I think that part of being a leader is bringing your people along with you, and instilling hope and excitement and a sense of purpose, and just helping people feel like they belong to your organization and they're part of something bigger than themselves. And people really respond well to those kinds of messages. And as a leader, it's your job to connect those dots. What are the things that motivate people to the story of your business as it unfolds day to day? And that is part of leadership, and that is all communications. So communications professionals like me are here to help. We're here to brainstorm on messaging like that. We're here to help create what is the messaging framework, so that everybody in the leadership team is working from, the same songbook, so to speak. We're also here to help and ensure that those messages that are created on high are then later woven down through all of the messaging that you might have, so that, even your announcement of your new benefits program has elements of those core messages from leadership woven down through them. So it's one cohesive experience for the employees, and really everything reflects what that leader says about what that organization stands for.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today and being part of this wonderful episode. Thank you for sharing your expertise on one of the most overlooked drivers of business success: communication and culture. Your insights highlight that successful change isn't just about financial transactions, or strategic plans, but about helping people navigate uncertainty with clarity, trust, and confidence. It has been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, Dominic. It's been a pleasure being a part of the show.
All right, so Linda, how can listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
My website is www.com-ext.com. So that's probably the easiest way to reach me. I'm also available. You can reach me via LinkedIn.
All right, thank you so much. I would love you to leave me with your links on Polymatch so I can add them to the show notes when the episode is out.
Yes, of course. I will do that so it can be, in your notes.
Okay.